Hello and welcome to another in my video tutorial series over the principles of business management. In this video, I'll be talking about strategic management. Now, I introduced strategic management in a previous video, and I'll restate that here and just simply say that strategic management is just a process that involves managers from all parts of your organization in the formulation and the implementation of strategies and strategic goals of that organization. Throughout this video, we'll look at several parts that are surrounding strategic management. So let's go ahead and dive in now into strategic positioning. Now, in the business world, I should definitely introduce one of the all-time greatest strategy gurus, that being Michael Porter. I hope you will take some time to look more into Michael Porter and get a greater understanding of his contributions into management in the business world as, once again, a strategy guru. Now, Porter developed strategic positioning, which attempts to achieve sustainable competitive advantage by preserving what is distinctive about a said company. It is based on the principles that strategy is the creation of a unique and valuable position, requiring trade-offs in competing and involving the creation of a fit among its activities. Now, there are three levels of strategy that I want to talk about here, and that's corporate level strategies, business level strategies, and functional level strategies. With corporate level strategy, this focuses on the organization as a whole. Sometimes upper executives will refer to this as the C-suite. Now, with business level strategy, this focuses on individual business units or those product and service lines in an organization. Managers at this level focus on issues aimed at implementing decisions under consideration from that C level or that corporate level strategy. Now, with the functional level strategy, this applies to the key functional departments or those units within those business units. Functional managers are going to focus more on those tactical issues. Now, the strategic management process is something you should definitely know. And this has 5 steps that I'll go to in more depth here. But those 5 steps are going to be: the first one, establishing the mission and vision. The second being assessing the current reality. The third will be to formulate corporate, business, and functional strategies. The fourth level, or the fourth step, is to execute the strategy. And then the fifth is to maintain strategic control. All the steps may be affected by feedback that enables the taking of corrective action. Now, with this first step, as I said, this is to establish the mission, the vision, and the value statements. Characteristics of a good mission statement. You should have a mission statement where the mission is the organization's overall purpose or that reason for its existence. It's going to be expressed in a mission statement. I encourage you to go look up some mission statements from companies that you are invested in or have interest in, or that maybe you just buy from a lot, and take a look at their mission statements and see if from that mission statement you can understand certain questions like: who are their customers? What are their major products or services? And maybe even in what geographical area do they compete? If you can answer these and lots more questions like that, then it's going to be a good mission statement. Now, characteristics of a good vision then. So if we have a mission statement, we should have a vision statement. And an organization's vision, its long-term goal of what it wants to become, is expressed in that vision statement, which describes its long-term direction and its strategic intent. So maybe you have a vision statement at your company, or go out and do some research and take a look at some large companies or even small companies' vision statements and see if it answers questions like: is it appropriate for the organization and for the times that it exists? Does their vision statement set standards of excellence and reflect high ideals? This is important. Does it clarify purpose and direction of the organization? And does it inspire enthusiasm and encourage commitment? Those are just a few examples of answers that a good vision statement should incorporate. Now I'll talk about the value statement. Sometimes you'll hear the value statement known as a good value statement. An organization's values are expressed in that value statement, which should describe what the organization stands for, its core priorities, the values its employees embody in that organization, and what its products contribute to the world. So a couple questions to think about with a value statement and see if it answers that. Does it express the company's distinctiveness and its view of the world? Is it intended to guide all the organization's actions, including how they treat employees and customers? Will it be unchanging and valid 100 years from now as it is today? Another real popular question that I think is important is, does it reflect the beliefs of those who truly care about the organization, such as the founders, the CEOs, top executives, rather than just represent a consensus of all employees? Well, with the second step, assessing the current reality, look at where the organization stands internally and externally to determine what's working and what's not working. See what can be changed as to increase efficiency and effectiveness in achieving the organization's vision. Some of the tools for competitive intelligence include SWOT analysis, forecasting, benchmarking, and Porter's model for industry analysis. Let's take a look at one of those now, and we'll take a look at the SWOT analysis. You will find that it's hard to go into an organization and not be part of or be able to find some SWOT analysis that have been completed. Now, to develop a grand strategy, you need to gather data and make projections using such tools as the SWOT analysis. A SWOT analysis should provide you with a realistic understanding of what your organization in relation to its internal and external environments are, so that you can better formulate in the pursuit of its overall mission. Monitoring of an organization's internal and external environments detect early signs of opportunities and threats that might influence your organization's plans. Let's take a stronger look here at the SWOT analysis, because it involves a continual process of scanning both internally and externally. Now, the first one here, the S. This is going to be the internal strengths of the organization. Organizational strengths are going to include such things as the skills and capabilities that give that organization special competencies and competitive advantages in executing strategies in pursuit of that mission of the organization. Now, when we look at weaknesses, this too is an internal look. Organizational weaknesses are drawbacks that hinder an organization in executing its strategies in pursuit of that organizational mission. Now, when we transition to opportunities, these are going to be external. Organizational opportunities are going to include such things as environmental factors that the organization may exploit to gain a competitive advantage. And then the threats. These are going to include environmental factors that hinder an organization's achieving of a competitive advantage. Now, the SWOT analysis can be very detailed, or they could be very lean. It depends on what you and your team identify as those internal and external aspects of the SWOT analysis. Now, a VRIO analysis is a framework for analyzing a resource or capability to determine its competitive strategic question by answering these four areas. With value, is the resource or the capability valuable? And when I say valuable, this means, does that resource or capability allow your organization to exploit an opportunity or neutralize a threat? If you're able to answer yes to that, then the resource puts you in a competitive position. If the answer is no, then you are at a competitive disadvantage. In the analysis, when you look at rarity, is the resource or capability currently controlled by only a few firms or no other firms? If the answer to this question is yes, the status gives your firm at least some temporary advantage. If the answer is no, you're at least at an equal competitive advantage with others. Now we look at imitability. Is the resource or capability you're analyzing costly for other firms to imitate? If the answer to this question is yes, that definitely gives you a definitive competitive advantage. If you answer no to this, then it gives you only a temporary competitive advantage until others are able to imitate that. And then organization. Is the firm or organization organized to exploit the resource or its capability? If the answer to this question is yes, that is, the firm has the necessary structure in place, culture, control systems, policies, and financing, then assuming yes, answers on value, rarity, and imitability, it would seem that the firm has competitive potential to go forward. If not, it may only be a temporary advantage for your organization during that analysis. Now let's look at another one of those tools I was talking about, and that's forecasting. Forecasting is simply a vision or projection of the future. Obviously, the further into the future that you can make a prediction, the more difficult it is to be accurate, especially when it comes to matters of technology. Yeah, forecasting though is a necessary part of planning. And there are two types of this that are trend analysis and contingency planning. With trend analysis, this is hypothetical extensions of a past series of events, using those into the future. And with contingency planning, this is the creation of alternative, hypothetical, but equally likely future conditions. This is also called in the organization or in business, you might hear this called scenario planning, as well as scenario analysis. Now let's talk about benchmarking. This term gets thrown out a lot, and it's used a lot in almost every organization. This is just a process by which a company compares its performances with that of high-performing organizations. An example of this might be with the airline industry, where they use benchmarks as average turnaround time. They might use benchmarks as on-time arrivals. That's a real big one. And one that's important to us is the cost per seat per passenger mile. They also use this on fuel costs, numbers of lost bags, lots of different areas. And you can do that in any organization. You could do that, if you're talking about your turnaround on a product, or how much is being sold, and the sales per district. So you can benchmark nearly everything. Next, we'll shift our focus to the formulation of the grand strategy. Strategy formulation is the process of choosing among different strategies and altering them to best fit your organizational needs. There are common corporate level strategies, and they're known as growth strategy, stability, and defensive strategies. Now, a growth strategy involves expansion, as in sales revenues, market shares, or number of your customers. A stability as a corporate level strategy involves little or no significant change. You're obviously stable. And defensive involves reduction in the organization's efforts. You might hear the term retrenchment used here. Retrenchment is a common management term that we use when it comes to defensive strategies. Let's take a look here at a well-known tool used to formulate corporate strategy, and that's the Boston Consulting Group Matrix, most commonly known as the BCG Matrix. This was, of course, developed by the Boston Consulting Group, and this matrix is just a means of evaluating strategic business units on the basis of their business growth rates, and secondly, their share of the market. Business growth rate is concerned with how fast the entire industry is increasing. Market share is going to be concerned with the business unit share of the market in relation to its competitors. And then market growth is going to be divided into two categories, low and high, just as you see here on this image. Market share obviously is also going to be divided into low and high, therefore giving us 4 quadrants to look at. In this matrix, the stars are the business units that are highly desirable. They have high growth and high market share, compared to the dogs in the bottom right, which are not so desirable because they have low growth and they have low market share. So this is, as I said, this is a very important tool that you can use in formulating your corporate strategy. Now, diversification is a strategy that is a growth strategy, and an organization adopts this for the development of its business. This strategy involves widening the scope of the organization across different products, as well as maybe even different market sectors. Operating several businesses in order to spread the risk is one possibility, and maybe even products that you have it diversify that could be related, or maybe they are unrelated. You see this diversification strategy at smaller retailer levels when you drive past a store that sells diverse products. Like, it's not just a gas store, but it also has souvenirs or movies that are available. That's an example of diversification strategy. Now, a specific diversification strategy is called vertical integration. And this is where the company owns the suppliers and its distributors of its own products. A prime example of this is Starbucks, which has long followed a plan of vertical integration by buying and roasting all of its own coffee and then selling it through the Starbucks coffee stores. Now let's take a look at competitive forces. There are 5 competitive forces that Michael Porter developed that can help businesses strategize based on these 5. Threats of new entrants, bargaining power of your suppliers, bargaining power of the buyers, threats of substitute products, and rivalry among customers or competitors. Once again, those 5 competitive forces are threats of the new entrants, bargaining power of suppliers, bargaining power of buyers. Number 4 is the threat of substitute products or services. And number 5 is rivalry among competitors. Now, the internet has definitely changed one of these specifically, and that is the bargaining power of buyers. Now, although the internet has impacted each of Porter's 5 forces, it's had the most impact on the bargaining power of buyers, because buyers have more information and hence more power than ever before. The internet allows it to make it easier for buyers to compare prices of products from multiple companies, all with just a few clicks there on your computer or taps on your phone. So we as buyers have the ability to go from one company to another if an organization raises its prices too much. Therefore, we have a lot of bargaining power. Now, I talked quite a bit about that power of buyers, that third competitive force. With the first one, the threats of new entrants are the extent to which new competitors can take away customers from existing organizations. The bargaining power of suppliers is the extent to which companies can easily switch back and forth to different suppliers. The threats of substitute products or services refer to the ability of an organization to switch to other products or services when certain circumstances threaten their usual channels. And rivalry amongst competitors is influenced by other 4 forces. I'll talk about those now. These are the competitive strategies. And you see I have the 4 listed here. Managers and organizations are going to be advised to know and select from one of these 4 competitive strategies. cost leadership strategy, differentiation strategy, cost focus strategy, and focus differentiation strategy. The goal of cost leadership strategy is to keep the costs and therefore the prices of a product or service below those of its competitors. The cost leadership strategy targets a very wide market, and this strategy puts pressure on managers to keep costs as low as possible. The next of Porter's 4 competitive strategy is the differentiation strategy. This involves offering products or services that are of a unique and a superior value compared to those that are being offered by its competitors. This strategy targets a wide market just like the cost leadership strategy, and managers have to spend more on research and development, marketing, and customer service when they're using this strategy. Companies use this strategy to create a brand, which is just a distinctive image that they hope will differentiate them from all of their competitors. And then the cost focus strategy involves keeping costs and hence prices of a product or service below those of its competitors. And it targets a much more narrow market than the other 2 strategies. This is a strategy executed with low-end products sold in discount stores, such as very low-cost items. And then focus differentiation strategy. The focus differentiation strategy involves offering products or services that are of unique and superior value compared to those of its competitors, and therefore targets a very narrow market. Now, this focus differentiation products often have very high prices, but this is not universally true. Now, an example that I can use here is with some of your cruise lines that offer on its cruise ship a special section that is reserved for elite passengers who want to pay a lot more money, who might enjoy such things as 24-hour service staff, as well as maybe private areas, maybe even private restaurants or chefs. This is an example of a focus differentiation. So let's go now move on to look at our next step, and that is executing the strategies. With strategy implementation, we're putting strategic plans into effect. This means dealing with roadblocks within the organization structure and culture and seeing if the right people and control systems are available to execute those plans. Essential for your success, and it's considered the greatest challenge of managers. This is closely aligned with strategic control. Execution is a process that helps align these 2 phases of the strategic management process. With execution, this consists of using questioning, analysis, and follow-through in order to mesh strategy with your reality. You also want to align people with the goals and achieve those results that are promised. In implementing strategy and maintaining strategic control, what we're talking about really is effective execution. Now let's look at maintaining strategic control. To keep a strategic plan on track, you need to do the following. Engage your people. Actively engaging people in the organization and clarifying what your group hopes to accomplish and how you're going to accomplish that. And this term gets used all the time. Just keep it simple. Keep your planning simple unless there's a good reason to make it more complex. You also need to stay focused on the important things in the organization. And then keep moving. Keep moving towards the vision of the future and making adjustments in your plans as you learn what works and doesn't work and utilizing your feedback. I talked about a lot with this strategic positioning and strategic management as a whole. Please keep in mind that strategic management involves the managers from all parts of your organization and all levels in the formulation and the implementation of your strategies and your overall strategic goals. Now, in considering whether the organization can affect and execute the strategy, managers and leaders must take a realistic and a very critical view of the organization's capabilities and its competencies. If the organization does not have the talent in areas of the organization like finance and management and sales, if it doesn't have that talent to accomplish the vision, the chances of success are drastically going to be reduced. You're going to lose that competitive advantage, and the future will not be what you planned for. Thank you for following along in this strategic management lesson, as well as my videos in Principles of Management. Take care, everyone.